Focal Point on AFR Talk. As you are aware, many of you, there is a political action conference going on right now called the Conservative Political Action Conference. CPAC, the first C, stands for conservative. So you would expect to find at this conference conservatives, not just those who are national defense conservatives, not just those who are fiscal conservatives, but those who are also social conservatives and conservatives when it comes to the issue of human sexuality, believing that marriage is the union of one man and one woman, that sexual expression was designed for the marriage relationship. But all is not smooth in the world of CPAC, and here to help us sort things out with some of that is Cliff Kincaid. Cliff, one of the really good guys in the conservative movement. He is the director at the Accuracy in Media Center for Investigative Journalism. Cliff, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, Brian.
Great to have you with us. And you're coming to us from the trenches, right? You are right there at CPAC.
That's right. I'm right at National Harbor. Actually a beautiful location, but it hasn't been so beautiful inside. These homosexual infiltrators, some calling themselves libertarians, are in evidence, and they don't like people like me. They don't like people like you.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, Cliff. You wrote a great piece. I've got it in front of me here. It was posted on the Accuracy in Media website on March 6th, which is a week ago, kind of laid in the weeds, and then it got some explosive attention yesterday in the blogosphere. And I just want to read a couple of excerpts because what I want to talk with you about is this whole issue of homosexuality in the conservative movement. And you know, you use the word infiltration. I want you to expand a little bit on that because it ought to be a concern to all of us who identify as conservatives. And here's what you say, Cliff. You say in your piece, there is no such thing, and I agree completely with everything you say in this piece, there is no such thing as a gay conservative unless the term conservative has lost all its meaning. But there is a homosexual movement that has its roots in Marxism and is characterized by anti-Americanism and hatred of Christian values. And what you go on to point out, Cliff, is that homosexual movement is gradually infiltrating the conservative movement, and they're making their presence known right there at CPAC.
That's right, Brian. I've actually been writing about this problem for years. I'm looking at a column I did back in June of 2010 about what I call a well-funded effort to divide the conservative movement and dump Christian conservatives as a key constituency for the Republican Party. This is what they're trying to do. And they've got some well-known people associated with this movement. I mean, people like Tucker Carlson, Margaret Hoover, Grover Norquist, and there's more of them who want to, quote, open up the conservative movement to so-called gay conservatives. But the fact is that, and I'm speaking as somebody who's been involved in the conservative movement for about 40 years. I started out in Young Americans for Freedom in high school. Conservatism has always meant respect for traditional values. And there's just no way that you could subsume under that heading homosexuality as a lifestyle.
Well, and you point out that it's one thing to sort of tolerate homosexual behavior as long as people keep it in private. In fact, the reality is, Cliff, if homosexuals were willing to keep what they do behind closed doors in the privacy of their own homes, nobody would know and nobody would care. Nobody's talking about raiding people's apartments and houses and hauling people off. They're the ones that have brought their behavior out into the streets, out into the public, into the halls of Congress and the legislative chambers, and demanded that society recognize, legitimize, normalize, and give special rights to their behavior. And that's where we have to draw the line. And Cliff, what you're pointing out is that when you get to that point, you're no longer talking about a behavior that can be is innocuous to the rest of culture. Now, there are some very harmful consequences of the homosexual movement to some of the values that we cherish.
That's right. And as a journalist myself, Brian, words have certain meanings. The homosexuals have already really destroyed the meaning of the term gay, or what we used to think of as gay conduct. They've destroyed the term in that sense. Now they're trying to co-opt the term conservative by claiming that homosexuals can be conservatives, hence the term gay conservative. And it is simply a contradiction. It doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the main points of my column. Now, I also go on in that column to talk about the fact that it's important to understand where the homosexual movement came from. And I actually held a conference that dealt with this subject through my group, America's Survival, a couple years ago, where we released an FBI file on a person named Harry Hay. He's considered the founder of the modern gay rights movement. He was a Communist Party member. He was also a vocal supporter of pedophilia. He was a vocal supporter, in fact, carried a sign in a parade praising the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Now, these are facts, and simply because I point out some of these facts, I've been attacked, as you suggest earlier, in the blogosphere and otherwise, as some kind of lunatic simply because I point out facts and want words to mean what they normally mean.
Well, you know, I'm looking at a website called Twitchy. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's a website that was started by Michelle Malkin, who was a noted conservative commentator and blogger and columnist. You see her often on Fox News. She started this website now, and so she appointed the people that are running it. I don't think she's involved in the day-to-day operations. You know, but Cliff, Twitchy, which is supposed to be a conservative website, came after you hammer and tongs after they got hold of your piece. And here are some of the excerpts from some of the tweets that they posted. They chose to post these tweets on their website as a way of letting these other people attack you and giving them the airtime to do it. Here's one tweeter says your column was offensive. Another one says one of the most disgusting pieces I've ever read. Another one, I'm utterly disgusted. This is intolerant, rambling filth, and uses the word bigots and bigoted repeatedly. Now, how do you explain the fact that a blog started by Michelle Malkin is coming after you for doing nothing more than upholding traditional moral values and supporting natural marriage? How does that happen?
Well, I guess Ms. Malkin must be coming under some of the same pressure that we're seeing here at CPAC. These homosexual activists who sometimes call themselves libertarians or even, quote, gay conservatives seem to have a lot of money behind them. And they are trying to make inroads into the conservative movement, put pressure on the conservative movement to accept them. Even the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which normally deals with regulatory and economic affairs, is holding a symposium or a panel at CPAC this afternoon that's totally devoted to promoting homosexual rights.
You know, and Cliff, I look at how the left has responded to you, even on a place that's supposed to be fairly safe for conservatives, like a Michelle Malkin website. You know, and it's clear to me that the homosexual movement, this is part of the danger here, they are not interested in debate. They're not interested in dialogue. They're not interested in discussing the issues. They want you silenced. They want you shut up. They want you gone. They do not even want your thoughts to be published in the public arena.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you one thing that happened to me at CPAC already. Some lady representing Reason magazine, that's a libertarian journal, came up to me with a microphone and interviewed me, and I was trying to be polite, but she was attacking me for that column and going on and on and on, even becoming somewhat obscene in her vehemence towards me. I just stuck to my guns, defending traditional values. I talked about the fact that I support the Boy Scouts keeping homosexuals out of the ranks. And you know, here's the point, that they not only want to influence and even possibly dominate the conservative movement. I know you've talked about this and written about this. Look at what they're trying to do to the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts is a private organization, always committing their young people to being morally straight. They've always kept the homosexuals out of the ranks, and yet the homosexuals want to dominate that organization too. Now, nothing stops the homosexuals from starting their own groups. They could start their own version of CPAC and call it the gay conservative whatever.
Well, and you go back to the Boy Scouts, Cliff, and again, the gay activists got the Boy Scouts to make a major concession. We'll let every scouting troop organization make its own decision. And the gay lobby said, no, that's not enough. We want you to force them to accept homosexual leaders and active homosexual scouts.
That's exactly right. And we see that another decision for the whole national organization may be coming down in May. And it's just another indication of what we're up against. They don't want to deal with the facts. And the fact is they're trying to pressure us to accept their lifestyle. They don't want to deal with the facts about Harry Hay. They don't want to talk about some other things I mentioned in my column, Bradley Manning, the traitor, being gay, Floyd Corkins, the guy who shot up the Family Research Council in Washington, being gay. These are inconvenient facts for them, so they attack me as the messenger who provides them.
You know, and one last question, Cliff. CPAC has held off Go Proud for the last 2 years. Go Proud is a homosexual activist organization, calls itself part of the GOP, call themselves conservative. And for the last 2 years, the organizers of CPAC had said, no, we're not going to let you sponsor the event. Now, and they're just coming under withering criticism for that. Do you think they're going to be able to hold out, or what do you think? Are the organizers of CPAC going to cave, and are we going to see a full-fledged homosexual activist presence next year at CPAC?
I think so, and I think what the CEI, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, is doing this year is an indication of what's to come. As I say, CEI, which doesn't deal with social issues, it's normally examining regulatory and economic issues, is holding a whole panel today on promoting the homosexual agenda. One of my friends, Barbara, called them and said, why don't you even have one person on the panel promoting traditional values? And they said, oh, we've got enough people on the panel. Sorry, we can't accommodate your wishes. This is what's happening. And I think if things go the way they are, next year, CPAC will be opening its arms to this kind of influence.
Cliff Kincaid has been our guest, director of the Accuracy and Media Center for Investigative Journalism. Thank you, Cliff, and God bless you.